some audio work.
We are flowing.
So now that the
Residents
being
that I
optimistic
spoke
that the
to have
virus
is
is
concerned
for the most
and
part
have sent
taken
letters
effect.
to
I
council,
hope
but
I'm
nobody
right.
wants to act on it, so
Now,
we're bringing
if
it
I'm right,
again.
then the audio band is going to start increasing and
And
it's starting now
overflow.
gradually.
Almost hit a recycling tipped over into road today. Recycling
Cheryl?
was what, last Wednesday?
You're leading us off tonight, so I can turn it over to you.
I get to be first. I'm
It's
excited.
tipped over.
I will call the Community and Economic Development Committee to order at 6 p.m. First thing is the Residential Anti-Displacement and Relocation Agreement, and this is in regards to the RPIG grant that NDS was applying for on behalf of the city to go towards the new water tower. Basically, there is no displacement. If this were any other type of project, that's what this would be required for, but a water tower is not going to displace any residents or businesses or anything like that.
Do we have to adopt this policy each time we have a project like this, or is it a policy that's
It's
in
grant
place?
it's a grant particular.
So each time we
Yep.
have to redo it, okay.
So we're just adopting their displacement and relocation agreement that we will not displace anybody.
And commitment of funding for
Yes.
residential RPIG grant.
And it is a commitment for the additional funding that's outside the grant funds. Any questions, comments?
Do we have any idea what that additional funding is at this time?
No, no idea. So the RPIG grant, for instance, it could be $500,000, it could be
Bob.
$750,000.
Real quick, I don't mean to, yeah, just pull that up.
The RPIG grant could be $750,000 or it could be $500,000. So that alone, we don't know. We know we've already earmarked $1,050,000. Hopefully we'll get to $750,000 from the RPIG. That may leave a balance of $500,000. But unfortunately, they're asking for this to be in place prior to us even applying. We've been working on this RPIG grant for quite some time, but, so we keep making it, I won't say the next round, but they keep asking us more questions, so we're still in the hunt. You know, the NDS they feel good about where we're at so far, but it's not a guarantee. So I would say we would need, if I would say we'd need $500,000 more. And the commitment of funding is council stating they will make sure the project gets funded after the grants, on top of the grants, if that makes sense. So I don't know that they're looking for a dollar figure because we don't know what that dollar
Just
figure
a
is.
commitment at this time that we will.
Correct.
Anything else?
And just real quick, many of the grants that we have some language with anti-displacement in them, but they're built in, and it's kind of a given, like the critical infrastructure grants, they all have something of that nature.
The CHIP grants.
The CHIP grants, yeah. This was just very specific since the city, I've never seen an overall citywide plan. I don't know if you guys have ever done one before.
Mm-mm. It's typically included. You guys want to move this forward? Okay. Any other updates from anyone? I will adjourn at 6:04.
Okay, 6:05. I will call the Public Health and Safety Committee to order. I have trash talk tonight, 2 items on the agenda, literally. I'm going to go ahead and move, well, I'll go ahead, doesn't matter. I'll do the trash ordinance again. So what brought this back up, I know this has been an ongoing discussion item to see The last time it was brought up, it never got moved anywhere. I was unable to be here, and council's, or the committee's decision was not to do anything. And I think, Rob, you were the one, they said that was pretty vocal about it. But,
Well, not,
well,
there was
anyways.
nothing to do. Nobody's proposed any specific change to the ordinance.
Well, getting back to this, what got me bringing this back in was when I spoke up at the meeting last week and talked with Mr. Finney about an area that has been an ongoing problem. And it was said to me that council, there's nothing in the ordinance for us to, where the trash can be. So therefore, there's nothing basically we can do about it. And so I guess what I'm looking for is what the maintenance department needs from council, because right now it's on here, all solid waste containers shall be kept on premises as far from the streets and public ways as possible, and as great a distance from neighboring premises as is practicable and convenient. Each solid waste container shall be so constructed as to prevent its contents from being scattered by the wind and from being easily susceptible to catching fire or dropping its contents when moved. Well, some of the ones that are out there, and the one particularly that is saying that can't be, addressed, is by far matching this. So I don't know, I do know there have been several residents who have sent letters to council and, commending when this was brought to committee, saying it was a step forward to cleaning up our neighborhoods. Because especially some of the rental properties that we have that have multi-units, a lot of them also have trash cans that are kept in the front of the premises, which that's a business, and I'm sorry, I don't think that either should be kept in front of the property with trash, and especially trash overflowing. I think trash should be kept out of sight, and I don't think it should be stored in the front of anybody's property that is, able to put it to the side of the house. Or, I do understand that there might be a few exceptions. Maybe the person doesn't have a backyard. But again, if they do, there's no reason to have your trash overflowing and an eyesore and a public health hazard in the neighborhood.
Well, I think this does address that part of it.
It does.
It definitely addresses that it needs to be contained in a container with a lid and not exposed, on the ground and overflowing.
But then why are we getting it back that there's nothing, what is it you guys need to, to fix this? Because this is one thing, and I get it, you guys have multiple things going on in the property maintenance department. And that's why I asked Don to come as well, because he's been dealing with so much, I know, and I appreciate all the hard work. And this is just one of the many little things that I know that you're dealing with. But this is something visible that people do see as well, and I have had residents in a particular area that are very frustrated that their area is a trash eyesore because of some houses there. So, I don't know, Andrew, if you have anything that you wanted to add to this?
Well, just along the same lines of questioning, I guess. Because I have some of the past emails that we discussed in July, but is there anything that needs addressed within the ordinance that would make the property maintenance easier or in this particular, more enforceable in this particular issue?
Don, would you like to speak, Don?
I guess the issue isn't the ordinance, I think it's teeth in order to get him to do it.
What do you mean by teeth?
Getting something that gives us more authority or clout or ability to enforce something.
So is that?
I can say, hey, I had some rental properties that, so I would contact the owner of the property, and then he said, well, you have to make sure that you provide them with cans with lids that lock in. And so that's just something that, but if it keeps going on,
But we do have a chronic nuisance as well.
It is.
How is any of that working out?
It's really hard to document. There's so many things that you have to do in order to follow that, the rules that are in the chronic nuisance. You have to notify them in writing in a certain way, and that's 3 of those.
Now, is that kept in our computer system so that you guys have record? Is that something that Julie keeps track of? And especially even when you notify the police department, and, I mean, is all this, are you guys able to, keep an pretty accurate record on,
Well, that would be in Sundance.
Yeah, in the new system now, but yeah,
Yeah.
so if
Yeah.
Don is writing up, starting the process of chronic nuisance, yeah, he follows up on it. With the new system, we're able to do what we wanted to do. It's getting then, the final step is we charge them $250, which we don't want to charge somebody, we just want action.
right?
But this is just the process. Could the chronic nuisance be written better? Specific items could be. There's another item for, well, specifically speaking, trash. Sometimes within a week or two, these issues resolve themselves. Ultimately, if we knew garbage was going to be picked up in Ward 1 on Monday or Ward 2 on Tuesday, that would be the ultimate to help us out. Then we know when we see trash on the tree lawn, they missed their pickup, it's going to sit there for 7 days or 6 days, or pickups tomorrow. And that's the thing, we don't know when trash is being picked up.
And that's something that's been kind of talked about back and forth. I don't know how much of an issue, I guess, yeah, that could help, but I think in general, people that are going to live like that and have trash like that, I think it'll be constant, to be honest with you, but,
It's always going to be constant.
yeah.
Location of trash cans after they've been emptied is an issue on South Diamond Street. That's, just looking at this, practical and convenient. That's very difficult to define what practical and convenient is. That specific house had, I believe, a garage, a single-car garage that was converted to be part of the house. So now they have, granted they bought the lot beside them, but
They have an open
their
area.
garbage cans would either be on one side of the house or the other.
Or behind the fence where there's an opening. Yeah.
So,
To you and I, that makes a lot of sense.
getting in the weeds then a little bit on that practical and convenient side, substituting practical and convenient to what Mr. Semino suggested, does it make any difference is my question? Substituting that for, placed in an inconspicuous place.
Why don't we just go
the
rear of the
language.
house? Go place at the rear of the house, or behind the house. If they're on a corner lot,
Because we have some people that can't do that. And there's,
again, yeah, so
And
then
then
we
you
get
have the
into
corner
practical.
lots that can't. From one side or the other, which is the hidden area. It's hard to say.
Again, practical and convenient.
I think addressing the way the lack of containment is more of an issue. I am okay with seeing cans that are neatly positioned somewhere. I am not okay with seeing trash scattered about and overflowing out of the cans.
So I'm struggling to figure out what the essential problem is. If it's trash that's visible and annoying, which sounds like what the residents are complaining about, then we don't need to change the ordinance, we just need to enforce it. If it's containers not being, or being visible from the street, we've already talked about some of the issues there. When this first came up, I actually drafted some wording that said it had to be behind the property line, or what do they call it, the building line, right? And then we run into the problem of corner lots. So, and then the third issue that became a problem with just the placement is that we have more than one kind of receptacle. We have garbage and we have recycling. And we have a contract with the recycling that doesn't address this. And in fact, for some residents where it's difficult for them to bring their recyclables out front, they have a program that they will go and retrieve it, but then those containers have to be within 50 feet. So now how do we resolve that? So we could have an ordinance that says your trash cans need to be behind the house, but for some people, they're gonna have the recyclables in front. So I just don't know what the right answer is. But the only thing that I can say is if somebody has a solution, then, you know, bring it. And we'll look at the code and we'll look at the change and we'll see if it makes sense. There's been a few suggested things, but nothing, as far as I can tell, has been put on the table for discussion and approval.
Can you walk us through when you identify, you know, a house that you might issue a nuisance complaint or a letter to, what that process is, and you don't get a response or they don't clean up, what's your next step? And is that what you're referring to in terms of teeth?
Yeah.
You know, those next,
Yeah, we would send a letter to them. If it's a rental property, it goes to the owner and the tenant, and then we'll do that a couple of times, and then we'll send a certified letter. So it takes a few times to get it through there. Like I said, a lot of times though, it's resolved after a couple weeks. You'll see, okay, they're back, okay. So then, if it happens again, does that become the second time in the series to make the chronic nuisance? So, I guess record keeping and following through.
We just want to make an ordinance that, I mean, I just want the ordinance, if there's like I said, with the practical and convenient, yeah, I think these two words are just too open-ended.
They're vague, a lot of that I see is quite vague.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Kalfi, what are your thoughts with those two words? You being an educator, former educator, and what would your suggestion be?
I have no comment on
No
it.
comment. Just curious.
And we hear you, Dawn and I kick this around all the time, and unfortunately, and he writes violations constantly.
Oh, I'm sure, I know.
Maybe 50–70% of the people realize, oh, I made it, I'll do it, I get it taken care of right away. It's the other ones that don't. And generally, the landlords aren't too bad to work with, because they don't want their properties to look like that. It's generally the owner occupied that create issues, be it they're not cutting grass or disrepair or whatever. And we haven't figured out how the process to get them to court for these violations is months. So we just keep trying to communicate with the people, knock on their door, send them violations, and yeah, hopefully it goes away. Chronic nuisance, we really don't want to pull money out of somebody's pocket. If they're living this way, they probably aren't in a financial state
Not
to
always.
want to even be able to pay $250.
But you're getting their
Not
attention
always.
now.
We're getting their attention, and that's primarily, we'll waive that if they'll call us or communicate with us, and that's another issue.
Well, like I
We
said,
don't. You
I
know,
mean-
Can we issue them a ticket for trash on a tree lawn or something? I don't know. We haven't yet. But, you know, it's difficult walking on private property and issuing a misdemeanor charge right away without
well, I
Portage
wouldn't
County
think you would
Court.
do it right away, but I'm just saying, it's constant with some of these, it's just constant. And when the building department's making a remark like, well, there's nothing on our ordinance that states that, you know, we can't really do anything, there's no reason. Well, that's when it's kind of like a red flag to us. Okay, well, we need to look, what can we do to help you so that, you know, we can help make your jobs maybe a little bit easier on enforcing and, you know, help at the same time clean up a neighborhood, because that's what we're supposed to do. So we're supposed to help create these ordinances so that you guys, you know, if we need to change something or tweak something along the way, because things do change. So,
Whole city garbage collection would help tremendously, and we talked about that. And I think there's a few of you that agree and a few of you that don't agree. And I understand there's a lot of issues that come along with it, but I don't know of anything better that would allow us to see a ward and know they're getting picked up on this date, or a ward, whatever the wards are.
So
Some
we've thought
communities
about, because I know there's some that actually, they keep the containers in the front yard. What if you address that issue and it had to be in the drive?
Well, they're not supposed to be kept in the right of way.
But the ones that I think we've had issues with in the past have actually
Well, they're
kept
behind
it
the sidewalk.
behind the sidewalk,
Right.
actually in the front yard, in the grassy area.
Right, but so it says, far from the streets and public rights-of-way as possible, and at a great distance from neighboring premise as practical and convenient.
Right, that's what I'm
Yeah.
saying, I mean, if practical, it's almost too vague, I mean, you can keep it in the front yard based on that
Right,
statement.
right.
So is that something we want to address, so that they can't keep it,
Right,
you know, in the yard, it has to be in the drive, or front of the garage, whatever it may be, but still practical and convenient.
Sure.
It's just a thought. The other thing is, if it is in the front yard or in the drive, and it's contained and the lid is closed, the animals can't get to it, the wind's not blowing it, you really can't do anything.
I had one of
So-
those last week over, and it was between the two houses in the little strip of property, and the neighbor was saying, can she move that behind or beside, and that was convenient for her. So that's where it is.
That's where it comes into problem.
And it was closed, it was fine, it smelled a little bit, that's what he was complaining about, but she was doing everything that was within the ordinance.
Mrs. Michaels, I guess I do have a comment about it, so not the possible, practical and convenient. My main thought is that we have to have the trash inside the can with the closed can.
It
The
does.
first paragraph of the maintenance of containers gives the responsibility to the owner, the tenant, the landlord, whomever, that they have to have a container, it has to have a lid, it's got to be enough to contain the trash from 1 week. All of those things, supposed to be unleakable, blah, 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 blah. I think that's the most important, that we have all the trash inside
Exactly.
the
I do.
container.
I agree with
That is the number one thing.
And that's not even happening.
But to me, that's the number one thing. The other thing about, can we fix it in the trash cans in the front yard, the designating that it has to be behind the front of the building would solve the front yard trash cans, but there's lots of issues that it won't solve, because many houses are bumped out, and that front line still has a lot of room right next to the driveway, the front yard. You're not going to get them away from the front of the house just by doing that. It would solve that one problem. But my concern is just that the trash is all in the bins, the lid, et cetera. That's my concern.
Well, and going on.
And I am a supporter of going for each ward, knowing when the collection dates are.
Going off that, though, so 1060-1, if the information on there is enforceable, then switching to kind of the chronic nuisance that you were talking about, that ordinance, is there something there? Because what you just said, that 80% of the people you send the letters to, they fix the problem. So we're talking about the chronic nuisance individuals. Is there something within that ordinance that could be updated or enforced, or what you're referring to as in adding more teeth to it? Or is it just a process that takes a while?
it's just the process of the multiple violations, then they have so many days to schedule a meeting with the service director to sit down and resolve their issues with a plan.
I can say that, because I do the chronic nuisance for the police department, and it's pretty successful. I mean, we never have to, hardly ever do we have to send an invoice out for $250.
Have you had any, Kay, with the trash issues? Have any of those, like the one particular one on, that we know is a habitual problem, have you had to have been involved with them for any chronic nuisance? Because I know there've been multiple.
What I would need is from that certain department is they would have to submit in writing, like, how many occurrences happen within a 180-day period. And then that's when the chronic nuisance letter goes out. They have
'Cause I
30
would think
days,
there would have
and then
been
they
with
have
that
30 days to
particular one.
abate it, or whatever, you know. So,
Yeah.
like I said, it's very successful when I do it for the PD, so.
So I just meant, you know, with the building department, how many, like,
I haven't issued, I think but one letter to them.
really? Wow.
You drive by and it's all good, you know, and then sometimes it's overflowing, you know, so.
Yeah.
So does it seem like they need an additional container?
Probably. I mean, if this is the case we want to focus on.
Well, I'm just
I
saying,
can
I see it
focus on
every day, and I have the neighbors, there's 3 neighbors that deal with seeing it and smelling it, and, you know, they've been watching, and they do call me, or send me an email.
I think I can focus on, if there's
I
something in
mean-
particular we need to focus on, say, I would like you to pursue this as a chronic nuisance, and I can do that.
Okay, so that's kind of, if we as council members see something or been dealing with something, then maybe if we give you a heads up saying, hey, this house, this area, you know, the residents have been calling us, because there's another one afterwards I'll talk to you about that
Okay.
is still, that they're having problems with. It's been another trash issue. You know, that kind of helps us. But I'm still want to just double check before I go on to the other topic, that everybody is comfortable, and Don and Bob and Kay and Andrew, and Matt and my committee, Rob, that practical and convenient, you want to leave these 2 words in the ordinance.
I think my question would be, is it enforceable as written, or does it need updated? Because if it doesn't need updated, then we shouldn't do anything.
That's
So,
just what I want to know. I just want your honest opinion. If this is, you know, 2 words that would help your job, if we maybe have the law director change those words around a little bit to talk about.
I would like to see it more specific so that we could make it easier to enforce.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Matt and Rob, what do you feel?
I'm always open to suggested changes, but I haven't heard any. I mean, you want it to change, but you're not telling us what you want it to be.
He just said
So-
more specific right now, but
But that's
Make
not,
start.
that's.
Because when you look at the
That's not a
word,
change, that's just the
If you're
that's just
gonna-
characterizing what they want changed. If you have more specific wording, by all means, send it.
we can talk after the meeting.
Sure.
I don't need to put you on the spot now, but I appreciate that.
Well, no, I'm not trying to do that either, I'm just saying, you know, that's what we do. We talk around this stuff for a long time, but the critical thing is to have a change, and I'm okay with a change if it makes sense, but I gotta see the change first. I'm not gonna give a blanket, say, yeah, go change it and we'll approve it.
No,
Give us a suggestion,
My
we'll read
opinion
it.
is maybe just to amend that 1060.10 and just take out those 2 words.
I think if you just take out those 2 words, you're still gonna have to define something else, because it still says at just as great a distance from neighboring premise. So instead of being on this side of the house in the front yard, they're gonna move it right in the middle, so it's equal distance from both neighbors. You've gotta have some defined issues of what you want. I don't think you can just take out those 2 words.
Well, the whole sentence is full of those problems, because
Right.
who defines each of these things? What is
So
as far from the street as possible?
I think it's
Who
all about
who defines that?
Well, I could.
If possible.
It's your back property line.
It's back property line, right. I could argue
So-
that.
So everyone's gonna have their cans all the way at the back.
Yeah, so that, as far as possible, you could drag it all the way back. So we
Well-
certainly don't mean that. And then on the other one, as a great a distance from the neighboring premises as is practical and convenient, for whom?
Right.
Right.
The neighbor or the property owner?
I agree.
I had a call about that. The person was putting their can next to their garage, behind the front of the property, the house line, actually in the side yard. But that is right close to, there's only 8 feet from there and the side door on the other house. And they're smelling the trash right there all the time, and they're calling about that. So it's fraught with problems on all of those words. What's
My-
possible, convenient, and practical.
My guess is because somebody wrote this, right? Didn't just come out of the thin air. That they probably, I'm guessing, revealed these issues. And there's no simple language that fits every situation. We've talked about all the different circumstances, and I think they finally said, well, we'll put this language in here because that's the best we can do, believe it or not. But if someone can come up with better language, let's entertain it. Let's see if we can agree that that's the way to go, and then we'll take it and
And
vote on it.
I will meet with you maybe one day this week. We'll figure out some days between now and the next committee meeting. I'm not gonna rush on this, obviously, because we've talked about it for quite some time, and I know we're not gonna all agree on whatever we come up with, and we don't all have to vote for it. But again, I want to at least, Don was great enough to come back here to give dialogue of what he's going through, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate that, we're able to, discuss this, and again, we all don't have to agree, and we'll figure out if we can come up with some ideas with him and the law director. And I think Cliff had his hand up, or did you have your hand up, or was it Larry? Larry. Okay, go ahead, Larry.
Well, just a quick thought, would it help at all, in the meantime, to send out a letter with the water bill summarizing the law and asking people to please try to keep their trash cans out of sight?
Oh, you can always try.
Alleviate some of the problems in the meantime.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, we can always add different times on the water bill, whatever, we do have that accessibility and the website, so thank you.
About as property maintenance officer deems appropriate.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay, I'm not done with you, Don, okay. So, moving on to the next ordinance, enforcement of property maintenance tickets. Kay had told me this got brought up at a CIC meeting, and we thought it was kind of worth bringing it to council. And I did have asked Chelsea last minute, and thank you so much. She sent out emails to her council clerks, just to kind of get a feeler of, what other areas their property maintenance person is able to write tickets and, for them to be enforced. And I believe there were 4 of them that came back that their property maintenance officer had the right to be able to write tickets. I'm gonna turn it over to Dawn, and if you wanna just kind of maybe talk about what you talked about and kind of throw it out to council so it's, can start, maybe we could think about it, see if it's something we can do, how it can be done, and ways it might help us.
Well, Bob and I have been talking
Yeah.
about it over the last couple of weeks. I noticed that another bigger city would do that type of thing, and it was all trash related most of the time. But we talked about also being able to give a warning, saying, hey, here's a warning that looks just like a ticket, but there's no fee. And then you have so many days to take care of it, and then you would get the ticket or something.
Yeah, parking on tree lawn was
Yeah,
a
parking on the
specific.
tree lawn's a big one.
And we had dialogue this morning with Jeff Wallace. He's looking into a ticket book for Dawn to use. Police department, Dawn would write the tickets, hand them to the police department, then they would do the research, and they would log them. They're misdemeanors, as they are now, but parking tickets are misdemeanors. After you get so many of them, it becomes an issue, but we can't run license plates, we can't run VINs, and that's just not gonna happen for us. That's not gonna be made available. But we could potentially write parking tickets with a legitimate parking ticket book, like police department. Police department would then process them for us.
What about properties that have cars parked on them that have expired tags?
Yeah.
Is that something if you're, looking at a property and you see a car that's parked there and it has expired plates, would that be something that you would be able to, is that enforceable?
As of right now, I'm on my fourth letter to a house that refuses to acknowledge me, so, and then I've had a vehicle that I talked to a young lady, it's expired. She says, my water pump's bad, I don't have a driver's license right now, so I'm not gonna get it fixed, but it sits there in an apartment complex like area. And then I've got a car over on Sap Street that's sitting there with a broken out window in the back and a license plate that I can't do anything about, and I've sent an email to the police department to ask them, hey, can you tell me who this is so I can send them a letter and tell them to move this vehicle, because it's got a broken out window. I'm sure that would be good to have a car sitting in the street with a broken out window, just
Right.
animals and whatever, just doesn't make sense, so I've got like 3 or 4 incidents going on right now that I just there's no way to enforce the.
Are you able to are they able to give you that information, or?
I haven't gotten it yet, it's been about a week, and then I haven't, on the one with the lady that's parked in her backyard, she hasn't acknowledged it, so that'll have to go. I think I sent a certified letter last week, so I haven't got a reply back from whether it was delivered or not, and then after that, I'm not sure where it
So
goes.
something like, with that, maybe like the police department, that if they're not maybe able to get back to you, is that something that maybe you could send, like, let Kay know it's been so many weeks since I haven't heard, and I don't know, then at that point, Kay, would it be helpful if maybe you send it to Jeff to let him know that,
I
is
could
that?
try.
Or, is that an option? I mean, because I understand it's gotta be frustrating, because you guys can only go so far. And, again, this is it's out of my realm, I'm just kind of discussion, so.
We've talked about multiple things. One specific item are violations in the right-of-way, which could be handled with a parking ticket if they're parking on a tree line. But if the vehicle is parked on private property, then we would not issue a parking ticket, because that falls under a different codified ordinance. And the reason some of these take so long, we have a process we have to go through. If we don't go through this process and we do end up in court, the magistrate will throw it out and we start over.
Right.
So that's why we give them a violation, and we have to communicate, make sure they got the violation, and then we listen to their excuse, we try to give them time. It's just a process, and it's daunting and it's frustrating.
But it's like if a
We-
car's sitting out and it's got shattered windows and
Right.
it's been sitting there, it can't be like,
If it's on a public street, it
why
should have been.
isn't it being towed and taken even down to our police department and off of our off of our streets? Why should, who would make that happen?
Be the police department.
And
But-
would that be, well,
Specifically, the police department would handle those violations within the right-of-way.
I'm trying to remember that you sent out an email, and I can't seem to find it for some reason, but I thought that your suggestion was that we go back to the process of hiring somebody just to issue tickets,
Yes.
and that, and by your estimates, it would pay for itself. So maybe that, because it sounds like it's a resource issue on one hand,
Correct.
and having,
The position used to be the meter maid.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I'm not sure what the position would be called, meter technician maybe,
right.
for police department. It was a non-commissioned officer. I was wrong in my email thinking it was a non-commissioned officer. But as we remember, she wore a badge and a uniform without a gun and drove the scooter and would write parking tickets.
right.
Yeah.
Um,
And And that could be somebody working with
And I'm
the
not
maintenance
sure
people
why-
to, follow up.
But it wouldn't be all, like, police ticketing, it would also be building department stuff, because she
Right.
specifically did tickets and only tickets only.
But parking on the tree lawn is
Yeah,
probably
that,
more
but
of a
some of the
police
other stuff.
enforcement.
Some of the other
Exactly.
stuff that he's been, wanting to
Right.
write tickets for. So-
Yeah, I don't know how to
So,
resolve
yeah,
those issues.
Private property is different than, again, the right-of-way. So if we had a hybrid position, a traffic, or a meter officer slash property maintenance officer, I think they're doing, at least the way it was defined before, when Marine did it, that was it was defined differently. We would have, if we were to put together a hybrid position, I think we'd still have to change some of our ordinances for private property issues, be it parking or trash, parking on private property, trash, a roof in decay.
Right,
Those are different than
right,
a motor vehicle
yeah,
issue.
so that couldn't fall under, like, the police
I don't
department.
think it would
So,
fall under.
Brian, something like that, so if we were to, like, give him, in order to get him, our building department, both him and, Mike, the authority to write tickets, would that have to be like a payroll thing as far
No.
as,
From what Jeff and I discussed this morning, it wouldn't be a payroll item, and it's not clear to me if I can write tickets and Kay can write tickets and Dawn can write that. That's kind of a gray area to me. Jeff just said, we'll get your ticket book. So I don't know what it takes.
sounds like
Well,
something the law director,
well,
and
but-
whether it's a position or an added, duties to that, but if, Jeff does have that on his books too, as a
Right.
position. So would, if you're adding more, stuff to him, or you're creating another position, I guess that's up to you and Kay as the department heads to kind of figure out how you guys would wanna do that. I wanted to, is there anything else, Don, that what you would wanna say that, you think that might help you?
Well, before you do that, maybe I'm confused about the difference, but I always think of tickets as completely enforceable at that moment, right? So if we're talking about giving authority for these other kinds of violations like trash and maintenance, then you write a ticket and they have to pay it,
Right.
or they go to court or whatever. Before we get to the logistics of how we make that happen, we need to ask whether we want to have that happen.
It's a
And I'm not so
discussion.
sure I'm comfortable, because it sounded to me before that the city's position on these things are to let the property owner or resident know there's a problem so that they fix it.
Right,
And even if they do, you would issue a $250 violation, you may waive it. Well, we're going in an opposite direction if we're just issuing tickets.
I don't think that they came across that they just wanna issue tickets, like, I'm gonna write you a ticket. I think these are habitual problems that they're not getting results from. And that's why I question about the nuisance, because I said, well, where are some of these, with the nuisance, because we do have the nuisance ordinance. But some of these, I'm thinking, yeah, the difference between doing the chronic nuisance and a ticket, that's kind of maybe what you're talking about, like, what is the difference
Well-
between writing a ticket and issuing a chronic nuisance? Because
Well, I
chronic nuisance is 250, and
I don't know, I mean, that's what Kay said, I don't know I think the fees may be different depending upon what code violation is being violated. But, I mean, a ticket, like I said, is enforceable as soon as it's written. You're talking about a situation where we're trying to work with residents. That doesn't strike me as working with residents, and I don't know how we craft ordinances or procedures where one violation results in a ticket and another one doesn't. So it just sounds, I'm saying before we go down that road, we need to figure out when it's appropriate to do one or the other.
So the ticket specifically was tree lawn parking.
Well, then,
That was
okay.
it. That was That was
That's
our
fine, because that's a
only
traffic
tool.
violation, I
So,
get it.
For instance, high grass. Our ordinance currently is written within notification, you have 72 hours to cut your grass. We couldn't issue a ticket and say, you have 72 hours or you pay this ticket. I mean, maybe we could, I don't know. We'd have to rewrite our ordinances if that's the case.
Yeah,
And I'm not willing to rewrite all of our ordinances
No.
at this point.
so if the ticket issue is just for the tree
Just
lawn
for
parking,
Tree lawn parking.
So it is
I
just
think
for
the
that.
better
That's-
solution is to have a
Because you can't
position
ticket
that
private
can do
property.
it.
Mhm.
So I
don't
support what
disagree
you, what you
Because it kind of
propose.
was sounding like when, like you had said, with the, like the car, that the windows are shattered out and
Right.
stuff.
Correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a ticketable thing,
Mhm.
or maybe not.
Because that's
Maybe I
not
just
tree
need to
lawn
I
know-
don't
parking.
know.
Maybe I need to know
You're
what
saying it
is,
wasn't.
so they can get it off the street.
You
It's
guys-
parked on the street, though.
Yeah.
It is
So it's
literally
parked
on
in the
street.
right of way, same
Well,
as
that's
the tree
different,
lawn.
Literally
It's
on
not on
So
private
that's
property.
ticketable,
On
it's
Yeah,
not on
that's not private property.
It's on
Okay.
Sap Road, it is not on, it's on the street
Okay.
with broken
Yeah.
windows.
Gotcha.
So you guys have the payroll ordinances that you could, or the budget, that you could look and see how much money over the years has been received through parking tickets or speeding tickets and things like that. kind
And
of
how much it
compute
would cost to hire somebody to do it.
And, correct, yeah, exactly. Is it,
Yeah.
you know, now, again, that's not my territory, that's police departments, but I know in the past, there was a large benefit from having a meter made,
Yeah.
and
She
that
was
has
good.
gone away.
Are those numbers you might be able to pull?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had that position since I've been here, but I could
And then
go
that
back
would
to some
go
history.
through.
But keep in mind too,
Yeah.
people start getting tickets, you guys are getting phone calls, you as
Right.
the politicians. So.
Right, but I'd rather
again,
get the
there's-
call,
Public servants.
Okay, there you
but
go.
I'd rather get the call from somebody who got a ticket for a
Sure.
parking traffic violation than somebody who violated, building code.
Mhm.
And so, because that strikes me as a different, different
Yeah.
animal.
Don?
Okay,
Well, I
But-
think there's other things that happen that don't, and maybe we can make a list of those things that are hard to enforce, that we could also issue a warning that has more teeth than a nice letter that says, hey, you've broken this ordinance, contact me as soon as you can so we can iron this out. And then they just throw that in the trash, but a warning that's gonna be followed by a ticket makes, I think, more clout to our ordinance.
Well, again, thank you for coming in here, and thank you for all your hard work. I know it's a thankless job, and
You
I,
guys do a good job.
oh, no, but it's not an easy
I
fix.
get a paycheck every week for
Yeah.
whatever. I don't see that my way.
But thank you again, and, like I said, we'll talk about the trash ordinance, and I just wanted to talk about this. There you go. And I will end this at 6:48.
Oh, you have to leave?
At 6:48, I will call the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting to order. One item on the agenda this evening, pretty straightforward. Did they pass that check on to you yet?
Yes.
We do have it.
So a check has been forwarded to the city from Main Street Ravenna to cover the cost of the trees that were planted in the Meridian Street parking lot. So this is just to accept that donation of $13,800.
I have a question. Did we sponsor Main Street Ravenna to the tune of $15,000 earlier in the year,
For
Yes.
this year,
for this
This
year?
is-
calendar year.
This is from an anonymous donor, so to keep it
So it's money that's
anonymous.
funneling through,
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, it's funneling
I just wanted to understand if it was additional money, or if it was just the money that we had given them that was coming
they're
back
giving
to
you
us.
No, this was
I know.
a private anonymous
Donor,
donor
okay.
that is willing to pay for the
Okay,
trees.
okay.
Any questions? Okay to move this forward? Okay, excellent.
Let me add one real quick. At the end of the day today, I received an email from ODOT with with an example of consent legislature to pave Main Street, and the legislature states that the city will pay 20% of that cost, which is typical for our state routes. So that's coming at us next month. And they're listing that project at $1 million. So we would be looking at possibly 200,000.
Which would come out of next year's paving budget.
2024's budget.
2024.
Would that cover the entire stretch of Main Street through the whole,
Yeah.
through the city limits?
Yeah, I think they're underestimating, but yes.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Okay.
But that doesn't include any widening or
Correct.
sidewalks or anything,
That
that's just the pure pavement part,
Correct.
I guess, quick strip and, okay.
No action tonight though on that.
No action tonight, no. I'm
Okay.
just letting you know that that is coming at us finally.
Okay.
When we see consent legislature, then we know 100% that it's coming.
That's good.
And then it locks it in the calendar year.
Good news. Looking forward to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If there's nothing else, I will adjourn the Streets and Sidewalks Committee meeting at 6:51.
Okay, I'll start the utility meeting at 6:51. There's one topic on the agenda. Contract with University of Akron Research. This is a housekeeping idea that's been going on for some years. The biggest difference between this and the past, this was a 2-year contract. Now, it's highly proposed for a 3-year contract. And this is very important. And it just deals with water and water treatment, wastewater. So the big difference is going from a 2-year to 3-year contract. And that's the biggest thing of this. Are there any comments pertaining to this?
Should these be two separate things? Oh, they will be, okay.
Yeah, they're separate between one with wastewater and one with water treatment. Right. If there are no comments or questions pertaining to this, then can adjourn this.
Just recommend moving it forward.
Okay.
Okay, great, at 6:53.
All right, then at 6:53, I will call to order the Planning Committee meeting. We have 2 items on the agenda. The first item, the Public Defender contract, it's a yearly contract to pay for representation for indigenous, I was going to say indigenous people. Oh, the word escapes me now. People without means of
Indigent?
support. Indigent. Indigent people, I'm sorry. I had Native American Heritage Month on the line. I looked at the contract, it's the same, it's, I believe, $150 per incident, whatever that is. I don't know why we can't get multi-year contract, it never seems to change, but every year at this time, they ask the city to sign this contract, so. Any questions or concerns about this? We'll move it forward then?
Yes.
All right, so then the other item on the agenda is Design Review Ordinance 2021-066, which is coming back. I want to say to haunt me, but maybe I shouldn't say that. So I'm not sure what happened. Maybe, Bob, you can enlighten me. I guess there was a meeting with the Design Review Commission last Thursday. And so, for some reason or other, they decided to push forward changes that they had initially sent us back in January of 2021. Now, just as a little bit of background and history, we didn't do anything with those changes, and then some citizens presented some input and proposed some changes to Chapter 1434. We had actually, over the months, whittled down specific changes. Our committee forwarded them, but then at the committee of the whole committee that followed, they were not put forward for action by city council. In the meantime, it was discovered that Kent was sending out requests for qualifications for consultants to help them with their design review, architectural, they have what they call an architectural board to help them with their historic preservation guidelines and code. And so I proposed that we do the same, which we did. We're in the midst of that process. Council did approve that RFQ. It went out. We had some respondents. The plan initially was to have some of those respondents meet with the Design Review Commission last Thursday, but timing issues made that a little bit challenging. So it got put forward to the December 8th meeting, I believe. But somehow, amidst all that happening, we are provided tonight with the changes that were proposed back in January of 2021. Why?
Design Review has 7 members. One of them is resigning at the end of the month, at the end of December. The ordinance that was proposed, 2021-066, was to reduce the members down to 7 voting members. And then it was also modifying, allowing the mayor shall appoint 2 members from the following groups instead of 3.
Well,
There'd be
I saw that in there. Other changes were being forwarded as well. But let's stop with that specific issue. So the current ordinance provides for 9 members, including the mayor or his designee, and that's non-voting. So there's currently 8 prescribed members.
Correct.
My understanding, the last time I heard, that there were only 7 sitting members. Are you saying now that there's yet another, is it
So-
being reduced to 6 voting members?
No, so our ordinance is specific, 8 voting members.
Right.
We've had a vacancy for quite some time, so. with
Okay, so
8
there's not an additional,
Correct, there's not an
Okay.
additional.
There
So
will be.
there's going to be 2 empty seats. Reducing, by this ordinance, reducing to 7 voting members, then the mayor would only have to appoint 1 person. And then there becomes the quorum issue. The law director stated that if there's 8 voting members, we need a quorum of 5 to host a meeting. If there's 7 voting members, we need a quorum of 4. As with many of our committee meetings, our committees or commissions, finding people
right,
that are willing to serve is always an issue.
okay. Well, I'm not sure, I mean, because unfortunately, the ordinance does not say what a quorum is. There's nothing in the ordinance that says what a quorum is. Now, if you go by the fact that it says 8 are voting, then if we don't have the full constitution of that 8 members, if we have 7, because 1 isn't seated, you could argue that the quorum would be 4, not 5.
But according to Mr. Smino, and he put
Well,
it in writing, and that's what we
yeah.
have to go by, our law director put it in writing.
Okay, well, that may be an issue. I don't know if that's a fair resolution to this. It would be nice, but here's my point, though. You're asking for a change that doesn't really solve the problem. The issue is, the real problem is it doesn't define a quorum. These changes don't define a quorum. All they do is reduce the membership. The reason we're asking potentially to have a consultant look at this is to help to solve these problems. So it just kind of muddies the water for us to push forward these changes and then hire a consultant to do what? I mean, so my preference is not to move forward these changes now. I think we're just opening that old can of worms. Now, I don't know if we're gonna end up hiring a consultant. I hope we do, but until that issue is resolved, my preference is we just keep this as we have for the last couple of years on the back burner. So I'm confused as to why the Design Review Commission pushed this forward, knowing that we're in this process.
One of the other items was currently the ordinance states, once an application is received, we shall meet within 2 weeks. And again, here we are trying to get 6, 7 people to show up to a meeting on a monthly basis, let alone every 2 weeks type of thing. You know, that was one of the other items.
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with all those changes, but I'm just saying, as a general rule, let's not put the cart before the horse. If we're going to, and I'm not saying we will, but if the possibility is that we're gonna hire a consultant to help us do this work, then let's not go down the road of doing it ourselves in the midst of it.
I wouldn't expect the consultant to tell us how many members we should have. I would expect them to be a technical advisory.
Well,
of
but
today's trends.
they might listen and hear the arguments you're making and have suggestions and say, well, in other communities that have faced this problem, this is how they resolved it. They might have a specific suggestion about what a quorum is in spite of a majority and things like that. There's any number of solutions. If we pick the solution now and then we hire them and they just go and turn it around and change, or suggest we change it. Anyway, Cliff, you have the floor.
Do you all know how embarrassing it is and will be when people come in front of a committee and make appointments and maybe come from out of the city, maybe even out of state, to sit there and get a decision and give you plenty of time to do it, and then to get there and not have a quorum? It's happened. And now what we got coming here, and I did last Thursday, put a motion on the floor to try to change that. But in the next month, we are going to be one more person lower. Empty seats can't vote. They are not part of it. On top of that, we have 2 members there, 3 members that own property in this city. And since they own that, and if it comes up to changes on their property, they have to abstain from voting. So there's a good possibility here, if the right things come up, which have in the past, that we have to vote on one of those, we're never gonna have a quorum. Okay? I just put in there that I thought it was embarrassing, and I don't like being embarrassed. The mayor doesn't like it. I just wanted to cut down the numbers somehow. If you're not gonna move this forward or do anything with it, be advised that it says right on those, what are they, RFQs? What are they, is that what that is?
The RFQ is what we sent
What
out.
we sent out?
We
That they
came
say
back
it's gonna take 5 to 7 months.
Right.
Before that, which comes then back to you. Then it could be 3 more readings, so we're looking at a year's worth of meetings that we might not have a quorum. Do what you want, okay? But like I said in the meeting, and I said, if we got people coming in here and we can't make a decision because we don't have a quorum, I'm gonna tell them that the city could have done something about that, to keep this from happening, and they chose not to. That's all I'll say. I won't say it's council, the design review, but somewhere, somebody needs to do something about that, or just take that committee and put it right over there in that round file. Because if you can't act, you can't give the people the tools to do something, what good is it?
I agree.
Well, but there are other solutions. Number one, the mayor could appoint more people to the council. The council members could show up for meetings. I mean, you can't lay it all on the city council by saying we could.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
You said you could.
I said that I
we
will
could have
say
done
that
something.
the city of did
Right.
not care to. I didn't say
Right.
council
But we
or the
could.
meetings,
Well, it would be our role to change the ordinance.
Right,
only if it's brought in front of you.
right.
Right, but I'm saying just because we don't act on it because we have another initiative in the process, I don't think that places blame if there isn't a quorum on city council or the city, or however you want to, characterize it.
But I could see his point of it being embarrassing, like,
Right.
I mean, we're trying to get our businesses and our downtown, and, they do have to go through certain protocol. So if we want them to go through this certain protocol, we have to make sure on our end that we're doing everything that we can do so they can go through this certain protocol. And if we're getting people that just don't show up or want to show up, we may have to adjust the quorum.
Well, maybe, but how small do you want it?
Read Robert's Rules of Order. There's no number that is for sure.
There's no
Well,
required
I know,
number.
well, that's,
Right.
I just said that a few minutes ago.
Yeah, there's no required.
That's not what we were being proposed. We're
But-
being proposed
well-
with a whole slew of changes to the
But we do
ordinance.
have to look at the fact that our law director did respond and said what his opinion was of the quorum. And I do believe we have to take his
Right.
opinion into consideration.
Yeah.
So if he's saying that majority, with 8 members, 5 is a quorum, 7 members,
Right.
4 is a quorum, well then maybe we do reduce this to help them meet their quorum.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to see businesses coming into town or trying to improve their buildings and not being able to get through a meeting because there's not a quorum.
It's happened.
Because we have another vacant business that just happened over the weekend, and
Mhm.
it's been there for 10 years. And that, people are probably gonna be coming for that. That's a main storefront business.
We have too
And-
many vacant storefronts as it is. I do not want to hamper trying to fill any of them. And if this is a process that they have to go through to improve the storefronts and do facades or anything else, then we have to do what we can to make it happen.
Okay, well, fine.
Agree.
The problem facing us tonight is we were presented with a whole slew of changes, not just what defines a quorum. And I don't want to push that forward. I personally don't think that's a good idea. If there wants to be a suggestion that we add to 1434 somewhere that defines a quorum, and if someone wants to suggest what the appropriate number be for that quorum, that's a different question. And I'd be willing to do that. It will require, I believe, well, I don't know, this is in chapter 14. Maybe we don't have to go through 3 full readings. So we might be able to expedite that. And that's fine. I'm not saying we don't consider that. I'm just saying that's not what's on the table tonight.
Well, I'm happy to suggest it.
I think we also need to consider the other changes that were proposed, though. And, do we wait a year until a consultant comes through if it's approved?
We don't even know if all of this council's gonna vote to pay for, depending on
Well,
what the
and
price
I
But
is.
isn't that the
personally-
point? Don't we
I
need to
mean,
decide
at
that
30,000,
before?
I think that there's other things that are a little bit more pressing, like a comprehensive plan to get our zoning in line.
Well,
The main
again,
thing-
those are broader questions.
Mm-hmm.
I just, doesn't make sense to me to be digging into the code when the plan that this council agreed to was to consider, to send out an RFQ, and then consider hiring a consultant. If we're doing that, we're working against that whole process by, or undermining it, by then making changes before that process is complete.
So where are we in that process? Because the RFQs were sent out, we received the qualifications back from 3 out of, 8
Something like that, yes.
that were sent out?
Yeah, and posted on, in fact, one of them I don't think was even on the list.
So where are we in the process then as far as it coming?
Well, I just said before, the initial plan was to bring them in last Thursday. And then, but arranging that, given the timeline with when the proposals or responses were due, was too short a timeline, and it was decided to bring them in December. So,
Which
I-
got moved up 2 weeks?
December 8th, I think, is the next meeting.
yeah, it's the next
So that
second
was-
Tuesday.
Didn't we
I thought
okay
you were-
doing the one on the 22nd to
I
get
think
them
you're right,
in?
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it was coming in
that was
earlier.
news to me, I didn't know that.
I was at the meeting, that's the only reason I
22nd,
knew.
so it'd be Tuesday the 22nd, we were gonna try to get,
Get them in and
Tuesday?
have a special meeting to listen to them
At 10 o'clock.
At 10 o'clock, present that, yes.
But if, like I said, it sounds,
It's just my opinion that the whole thing's been hosed up from the beginning, okay? Just along that line, putting out an RFQ with money attached to it, even though there was conversation between a couple people here, was wrong. It just throws a wrench in the works, because what's gonna happen here, if you, any of you got the copy of the three that sent back? You didn't, because you came to the meeting.
Yep.
Okay. They're close to $30,000 now, and they have attachments on them that if they have one more meeting, it's $4,000 more. If they have a Zoom meeting, it's $2,500 more. And if we go over the amount of time allotted to have any other meetings, it's $295 an hour.
So the
Okay?
That's
$30,000
one of the
baseline
proposals.
is,
Two of the proposals were at or under the 30,000.
The one proposal you can almost throw out because it's a law firm. It has nothing to do with.
Right, well, that's the one you're referring to, I believe.
Yeah, but.
Well, but
that-
again, that's a different issue. We're in the process of doing that. Council approved that. I know you don't agree with that approach, but that's what council agreed to do.
All I'm saying is that's what's slowing down this process, and it's
Right.
gonna push it out another year. If
Yeah.
you wanna wait a year and have people calling you and be embarrassed,
Well, again, we can change the quorum part if you're concerned about the embarrassment factor.
it's like we have to.
That's fine. I'm just, but that's not before us tonight. What's before us tonight is a bunch of changes that I don't believe are appropriate, given what I just said about the process this council agreed to go through. That's my opinion. Now, if others,
Let me ask you that. That's your opinion,
right.
and you don't think it's appropriate, but you have six
Right.
other members here
Well,
that should
we're
be
gonna
able to vote on that.
Well,
So
we have
I'm
3
like-
members of this committee.
Right, but I'm talking about pushing it forward.
Yeah, it's 3
Okay,
members.
Okay, but if it came to the point where it gets voted on, there's other people here that get to vote, maybe we can get this straightened around. That's my thought is either do it all or don't do it all now. I mean, I've seen what's happening here, so I'll be there next year. I still have another year on mine, and I'll sit there and come in and get to the point where we can't have a meeting. That's fine.
And we can't
I
get
don't
to
get
that point.
paid, I don't get paid, so it doesn't matter.
I think we on council need to do whatever we can to make it, so things aren't tied up this long, because that's one of the frustrating parts of government. And I understand that there are processes that have to be in place, but this is kind of an easy fix if we can go ahead and change this.
What is your suggestion that we do?
Well, for right now, I definitely would put on the table that we change the quorum
To?
to whatever the law director recommended, depending on the amount of people we
Okay.
have.
Then
Just like
let's-
what we did with,
We can put that forward. I'll suggest to the law director he change.
I mean, don't you go by numbers anyway? I mean, if you
Mhm.
have 5 people.
Yes.
yes.
I mean, quorums, I mean, that's
Quorum
kind
is
of
based on the number of
numbers.
members.
Yes.
No,
But it's
quorum
also,
is not-
but it's
does not have to be set, it could be a fixed number.
a fixed number.
Because
yeah.
there are
But
some
we don't have to
legislative
make it a
bodies that
fixed
have
number.
hundreds of people. And to set a quorum at a majority of that would be unreasonable.
But
And
we know it's not gonna be hundreds of people.
But
for
we
this
know that
committee.
having 8 members is difficult to get 8 members there. So we
you
need to
don't need-
reduce the total number of members. And
no,
then
you
we
don't.
need-
All you need to do is define a quorum as a set number. You don't have to, because it's, again, we're back to making wholesale changes instead of simple changes. If the concern is, for the time being, although this has been in existence for quite a while, the fact that we were short the full, number of members of this council, then we don't have to change the consistency of it, and who gets to be on it and who doesn't, and who picks who. All we have to do is say, this number is the quorum. And we could set it at 4, for example.
But that might even be too many.
All right, then we can set it at 3.
Well, why do we even have to, I mean, do we have to set a number? Do we not just go by the?
The one empty seat has
That's
been
what-
vacant for, 4 years? Is that what you guys were saying?
Well, and we know 2021, since 2021 for sure.
So it's been a couple of years.
So it's been quite a while, and it's still vacant, and we have another one that's leaving at the end of this year.
Right.
So that's down to six seated members out of 8.
Right.
And the one that hasn't been filled because we can't find someone interested in doing it?
I don't know.
Or,
I have no idea. It's the mayor's responsibility, or the chamber, but the chamber has already got their member. I'm just saying, if you want to, if the issue tonight, the problem of a quorum is, we don't want people being delayed, we don't
Right.
want people
I
being
don't.
embarrassed, we don't,
Right.
any of those issues,
We
then
don't-
let's set the quorum number at a reasonable thing, and let's move forward and let all those other changes be in the hands of the consultant.
How about 3?
I'm fine with that.
Is 3 a decent number?
Larry, I'm
Larry?
sorry.
Well, if the intent or desire right now is to change the number to 7, so you could, if you think you could legally set the quorum at 4 right now.
No, not right now, it has to take council action, we can't do
I
it.
may start a ordinance to set it at 4. If you think that could be done, I would recommend that. I'd like to
Okay.
make one other technical comment. When the quorum is present, any vote is good, according to Robert's rules. If somebody abstains, that doesn't change the quorum.
Right, that's true. Let me just suggest this, for the sake of, coming to some conclusion here. Is it next, I'm looking at Andrew, when is the committee of the whole? Is it next Monday?
Mhm.
By next Monday, I will draft some simple change regarding the quorum. Now, 4, 3, I think 4 is a big enough, 4, that just means 4 is enough people to hold the hearing.
Right.
And then, the other question is what, because it's not in there either, what constitutes passing, an action? And,
I would say majority of
Right.
Yeah.
Who's there? And
votes.
if
Okay.
people aren't going to show
Okay.
up, they're not going to have a part
Right.
of voting on it. The people that
So if
show
there's
up,
4 people there that create a quorum,
there you go.
and 1 votes yes and 3 have to abstain because they have an interest in the property that's being discussed, then it's a yes vote.
okay, so if I make those simple suggestions for the committee of the whole, is
I'm
that
okay.
okay?
I'm okay.
And then to keep these other changes on hold, is that okay? I'm asking a compound question.
Changing the quorum only, I think, is sufficient at this time. Holding the other items until we're done with the review that we're planning to do, I think is okay.
Okay.
I hate to hold off, but the main thing that can help them right now is the quorum, and I'm okay with definitely moving that forward. There's some things I think maybe, like Cliff said, he'd like to see go forward, but I'm okay.
Okay. Then we will do that. And so the only action tonight moving forward will be a simple change to 1434 to allow for a specific quorum and what constitutes passage of an item by the Design Review Commission.
Since this question has come up before lately, if that is pushed forward during the committee as a whole,
Yes.
is it gonna have an emergency clause put with it or not?
I say we do.
We could.
No,
Oh, it
I
needs
don't
it.
want one. I
You
want, now you're looking at 4 months still.
No,
No. I don't think it requires 3 full readings for a
That's what I
change to
mean.
that chapter.
Emergency to have the 3 meeting.
Well, emergency means it takes effect immediately.
I'm sorry.
Immediately after the end of that month.
Will it have an emergency? No, it can go right away. I'm sorry, yes.
you want it to go right away.
Well, yes,
So you would want an emergency?
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
okay. I'm sorry, yes.
So
All right.
we would put it with an emergency clause, yes.
Yes, that way it would be effective by the end of the month.
Larry,
I'm just curious, doesn't any law change require 3 readings? This is a law
Well, but we vote the first vote we take on any action on a regular committee meeting is to dispense with the 3 readings, to suspend the 3 readings. And if there's 5 members that vote for that, then it doesn't require 3
You
readings.
pass a lot of ordinances, but I thought when it specifically was to change a law. that you
Ordinances
didn't
are
have that
laws.
option.
But all our ordinances are laws.
But they're not ending up in the codified
Yes, they are.
laws.
They all are.
Yeah, they do.
When you pass an ordinance to receive a donation or something, that doesn't end up in the codified
Oh.
ordinances of Ravenna.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Now I see what you're saying.
I think.
The only except, but it seems like we even dispensed with that, right? Was if it was in chapter 12, it had to go for, I never knew why. And apparently, our law director at the last meeting suggested we didn't have to do that either. So,
And I've made a lot of changes over the years to chapter 14 that didn't go to 3 readings.
yeah.
And they were passed as emergencies.
Yeah, as long as you waive the reading.
Yeah, as long as we waive the readings, it's
Right.
okay. Does that help answer your question?
Sometimes you choose not to because you want them to be publicized a little more.
Progressive quickly, but even with what the law director said last week, it doesn't make sense to me. I don't know that there's anything in writing that states they need to, they must. I know Kathy Ann years would always take chapter 12 through 3 readings.
Right, and a public hearing usually.
Correct, and that could even be done in 6 weeks. By the way, the committee meetings, the finance council, and then a special council meeting on either committee or a finance, so it could be done almost in a month and a half,
Right.
if that worked.
If it was that important. But I think that's an unnecessary burden for council to make all those special meetings and
Well, and if
hearings.
we found out by the end of this week, after committee of the whole next week, we are having a special meeting, correct, Chelsea? For the RPIG, because we have to have that approved before December's council meeting?
Nobody said anything.
Oh, Andrew was supposed to. So,
What was your special in December?
Public hearing?
Yes. Oh, that was for zoning, okay.
mhm,
That was zoning, all right.
yeah, so we're supposed to have a special after next week's meeting.
But that's for your thing.
Right, but if
Oh,
we
okay.
needed, because we're having that special, if this,
Now, this is not in zoning, so we don't even have a precedence for having the 3 full meetings in a hearing. All right, so we will be moving forward. I'll give you some language, and hopefully we can resolve this next Monday, and then hopefully be able to vote on it in December with an emergency clause, and if everything goes well, then we'll have a quorum set, and we'll avoid this unfortunate situation when there's not enough people on the commission to hold a hearing. And we'll keep the other stuff on hold. Is there well, there's no management to ask, I guess, unless Brian has something.
No, not on.
Then, at 7:23, I will adjourn the planning committee meeting. I think we're done for the night.
That's only an hour and a half, it seemed like.
It did.